Hey there, Penguin Trekkies. Your friend in the neighborhood, Trekkie Penguin Bob here. And I want to talk about some Trek news that maybe you've heard or maybe you haven't heard about. A few weeks ago, Michael Dorn, aka who plays Worf in The Next Generation, tweeted out the following tweet. Just got the news, being summoned back into action. Starfleet calls. And my favorite Klingon is being called back into service by Starfleet, and this little Klinguin couldn't be happier. So, if you want to find out the whole scoop and my thoughts on Worf's return and how that return is happening, then stay tuned, fellow Trekkies, as we sharpen up our batless and get ready for battle. Qa'pla!
You're listening to Penguin Thoughts. These are the thoughts that penguins are thinking when they were thinking that they were thinking about the thoughts they were thinking when they were thinking them. That is, we think.
Alright, so let's get into it. Now we might think that since Star Trek Picard Season 2 is yet to come out, that maybe we might see Worf show up in some way in that show. We have already seen Data, Riker, Troy, and 7 of 9 in Season 1 of Picard, and we know that Guinan and Q are both to be set to be in Season 2, so maybe it might not be too much of a stretch to think we see Worf. Well, as much as I would like to see Worf again in live action, it appears that Michael Dorn's tweet did not indicate being in Picard, and I have found a few articles pointing that the return of Worf is in a different manner. And actually, I'll put all the links to these articles in the description. Furthermore, Paramount Plus has also come out after Dorn's tweet and stated that he is not in any current Trek shows on Paramount Plus, which if you did not know what Paramount Plus is, it's the streaming service that is home to all things Trek. So, how is Worf returning to Starfleet? Well, turns out he's returning in a new Apple arcade game called Star Trek Legends, which actually launched last month in April. And Dorn, lending his once again iconic Klingon voice to Trek games, is not new for the actor. He has voiced several games in the past, like Star Trek Timeline and Star Trek Online, just to list a few, among other Trek games. So, let me share with you my thoughts on Worf's return in this manner, aka the Star Trek Legends game. I think it is great that his iconic voice is still needed after all this time of him not doing much of anything in regards to Trek. So good for you, Michael Dorn. You're finally getting back into Worf. He's getting back into that deep Klingon voice that we all love to hear. Okay, so let me spend just a few more minutes spinning some ideas, though, of where we might see Michael Dorn as Worf show up in any Trek stuff in the future. 1. There is supposedly in the works a Trek movie once again being made by J.J. Abrams. And at the time of this podcast, I'm unsure if this is happening or not. Trek seems to be up in the air at the moment, so whether or not the movie's going forward or not, nevertheless, let's just assume that things are happening and we'll continue on. Anyway, J.J. Abrams is going to be making a Trek movie, and it might be based in the Kelvin timeline. However, it is not just a stretch to think that we could see some alternative version or ancestor version of Worf show up in that movie. Because, well, we already know that Michael Dorn has done this before in a way. He showed up played an ancestor to Worf in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, when he played the Klingon lawyer for Kirk and McCoy when they were on trial. So, it is not a stretch to think we could just simply see another iteration of a Klingon that Michael Dorn might play, maybe even an ancestor of Worf. 2. There has also already been approved a 3rd season of Picard, and even though right now Paramount Plus did not indicate that the current shows would not have Worf in it, like AAK Season 2 of Picard, It doesn't mean that it couldn't happen in season 3, maybe. Or even in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Now, I know you're saying, wait a minute, that's a show way back before Kirk and them. But once again, Dorn has already played a Worf ancestor, so maybe we might see that same ancestor show up in Strange New Worlds. So we got that possibility. Thirdly, another possibility we could see Worf in. There's also nothing that says that Paramount CBS might decide to even make a Worf series. I know that the Captain Worf series that Dorn has been pushing himself over the past several years to CBS already. So who knows? Maybe they might decide to actually run with that idea, which would be kind of cool. Another one. Maybe there's Star Trek Prodigy. That's a new kids' Trek show that's going to be aired on Nickelodeon, which hasn't released yet its first season yet. But who knows? We could see Worf in that show in like maybe the second season or maybe even the first season if they haven't started making it yet. I don't know. Or maybe even a second season of Star Trek Lower Decks. I mean, we did already get a Q voice cameo in Lower Decks. So who says we couldn't get a voiceover of Michael Dorn being Worf? Either way, there are plenty of options for Dorn to reprise his role in live action or animation in the future. Either way, just glad to have him back in some fashion in this new Trek game. So let me stop spinning ideas here for a moment and share some of my mixed feelings about Worf in current Trek. To be honest, this little Klinguin has been having some mixed feelings in regards to Worf and any return he might have to current live action. I do feel it would be awesome to see him as Captain Worf or have his own series or however some way show up in live action again. I would love to see that. But my mixed feelings about that are in regards to how it relates to the current state of Kurtzman Trek and what they did to the Klingons in this Star Trek Discovery, which I personally felt was a poor showing and a lack of respect for who the Klingons are in Trek. They shaved their heads and have bad speaking of Klingon through so much facial prosthetics. It was hard for anyone, including me, who understands the Klingon language, to even understand or appreciate what the actors were speaking in Klingon. Now, this is not the actors' fault in Discovery, I feel, but rather the showrunners of Discovery who felt the need to change and make the way Klingons are way different than they have ever been before in Trek. And to put them in so much prosthetics that it made the actors have a very difficult time speaking Klingon, which, by the way, in itself is hard enough of a language of its own to handle, to speak without that hurdle. So to me, this is the very thing I would be worried about in regards to Worf returning to Trek right now in his current state ran by Alex Kurtzman, who in my opinion is really completely clueless on what the heart of a Klingon is, or even for that matter, what the heart of Trek really is. To bring back one of my all-time beloved characters, Worf, into live action right now at this point, I feel would be a gamble and a risk to ruining, in my opinion, a very, very good character. Because Kurtzman and other showrunners in current Trek have shown that they want to change everything on what makes Trek, in my opinion. It'd be like serving up a cold plate of 3-day-old gawk to a true Klingon warrior and expecting him to eat it dead, cold, and lifeless. It just doesn't happen. Anyway, that's the end of my rant about that and my concerns, I will say. But to have Worf back in a video game is still, to me, pretty cool. And since this little Trekkie penguin is also a gamer penguin as well, you never know. Maybe I might decide to actually check out this Star Trek Legends game on Apple Arcade and maybe even make a video for YouTube or live stream it on Twitch. Especially if I can get to the part in the game that has Worf in it. That would be cool. Either way, bottom line, I'm just glad to get my favorite Klingon back in one form or another, even if it is in just a video game.
You're listening to Penguin Thoughts. These are the thoughts that penguins are thinking when they were thinking that they were thinking about the thoughts they were thinking when they were thinking them. That is, we think.
Anyway, so there you have it. My Worf news and my thoughts about Worf's current return. I hope you are stoked like I am that we got Worf back in any fashion. I hope to see him more in the future as the Klingon I have come to know and love. So, get out your prune juice and toast with me to the return of our favorite Klingon, Worf. And I hope you decide to come back and listen to more podcasts from yours truly. And if you're so inclined, I also have a YouTube channel and I stream on Twitch and make rather silly videos and make silly content, as well as I have several other social media sites, which are all linked on my Anchor podcast page, and I would be greatly honored if you would come and visit and even subscribe. And as always, I am the crazy and silly Trekkie penguin named WhataboutBob, and this time I'm not jumping out the window, but instead, if you stay tuned after this commercial, you'll get a bonus review of another Trekkie thing I want to share. So keep the comms open, and I hope we see you on the other side. Well. Cool ice cubes on toast. Glad you decided to stick around for the bonus review part of this podcast. Of course, with yours truly, a little Trekkie penguin named WhataboutBob. Anyway, 6 years ago, there was a Trek fan film created about Prelude to Axanar. Since then, this Trek film has turned into a massive undertaking, including them building a full open studio, which by the way you could even rent to use, with high-tech Trek-style bridge set that they've used to film their latest fan film release called Interlude, the Axanar fan film. I'll include the YouTube link to their channel and also to the fan film itself that we're talking about here for the next few minutes. So, just to kind of break it down, what's happening in that fan film, and it opens up with the USS Artemis and the USS Ares in a fight with 3 D7 class Klingon battlecruisers, led by a Klingon only mentioned as Karn in the 4 Years' War at Axanar, which the whole fan film series is based on. Admiral Ramirez is in sickbay in critical condition, some type of power conduit pipe sticking out of his chest very close to his heart, and Dr. Howard needs to operate but can't do that while they're being under attack. So, Captain Jaconde, who's the captain of the Artemis, orders the Artemis to do a hard bout to go head-on with the D7s for a suicide run to blow up the ship by shutting down the antimatter containment unit to keep the D7s off the back of the USS Ares to allow her to escape back to Federation space, Earth, Starbase 1. At the midpoint of the video, we see Captain Garth, captain of the Ares, who is now a fleet captain, talking about the incident with the Artemis, with a logo in the background stating the 4 Years' War, a 10-year retrospective. So this is in the future, about 10 years from when that incident happened. Then we cut to Admiral Conrad Slater, Starfleet Commandant, speaking about Admiral Ramirez and how he had turned the tide of the war with the launching of the new Ares-class starships into the war, and it was the reason the Klingons went after him. Starfleet also believed that Karn could not have possibly known where Ramirez was, and that they had a spy in Starfleet ranks, which convinced Captain Garth and Starfleet Command even more for the need of Garth's plan at Axanar. At this point in the war, things started taking a turn for the worse, and the Vulcans eventually withdraw from the war. And the Federation must face the new threat, the D7s, without its strongest member, the Vulcans. Which will then lead into the next fan film, Axanar: The Gathering Storm. So, I'm not going to spoil any more details about Axanar, and about this interlude, fan film, or anything else about it, because there's even Prelude to Axanar, which is on their YouTube channel, which started it all. I encourage you to go and check out this fan film and their YouTube channel. Links I'll provide in the description of this podcast. And they also have a fan film studio called Aries Studio. They have a website for it. I'll also leave that link in the description. So you won't regret checking them out, Trekkies. Hey, would this little crazy Trekkie penguin ever steer you wrong? No, might fill your socks with jello, but never lead you astray when it comes to all things Trek. So, I'll leave you with this. Glory to you and to your house. Qa'pla. Hailing frequencies are closed.